This is Ed Rodgers, and I'm here to show you how. It's all connected. What's all connected? Check out my Program 1 video, where I explain my unique approach to current events that are impacting our lives. Today, I'd like to reflect on the Paris attacks and why it's time to stand together. As I listened to the news analysts discuss the whats and the whys, I was struck by some glaring facts. First, the people were sitting ducks because of the gun control laws that were in place. Had just a few of the victims been armed, the results would have been drastically different. I don't know if things will change in France, but if they don't after such a slaughter, it's proof that reason has left the building. I expect our president to artfully ignore the people's right to defend themselves here at home, claiming that an armed populace would somehow have made things worse. As I thought about some of the recent attacks on U.S. soil, the shooting at the community college in Oregon stood out. The victims in that attack were also sitting ducks. In both cases, the shooters were vastly outnumbered, but they possessed the great equalizer. Both cases caused me to wonder if there was something the victims could have done instead of simply waiting for the inevitable. I've given this a lot of thought, and I believe there are some things that could have changed the outcome. In the case of the Oregon shooting, the gunman was very close to his victims. Once it was clear that he wasn't making empty threats and that many would die, imagine what would happen if everyone rushed the gunman in an instantaneous attack of their own. Yes, it's possible that someone would be shot, but likely only one person and perhaps no one. The gunman would likely be subdued quickly and calls for help could be made. If I were in that classroom, I'd rather take my chances by going on offense rather than hoping for mercy from a madman. Of course, had the gunman known that there was a chance that someone in the classroom may be carrying, I doubt if he had entered the classroom at all. Regarding the Paris attacks, I think the non-Muslim nations of the world need to take a similar approach. The first goal of ISIS is to instill fear in the hearts of the enemy. We know that anyone speaking out against Islam, them, and especially their prophet, will be singled out and attacked. But what if everyone started speaking out? What if all those who understand what's happening fearlessly spread the truth? The offended Muslims wouldn't know who to go after. What if we recognize the multicultural experiment as the colossal failure that it is? What if we expose political correctness as a danger to our national security? Anyone who thinks that those who are out to kill us will suddenly start being nice if we stop offending their delicate sensibilities needs a reality check. What if we started demanding the elimination of all the no-go zones where Muslim radicals are free to do as they wish? These aren't just what-ifs. These scenarios are absolutely necessary if the world's non-Muslim nations are to survive. France's Muslim population is at 7.5% and growing. Soon it will be too late. Now is the time to band together and go on offense. The same applies to the United States. ISIS is already here, and who knows how many non-ISIS sleeper cells there are. If we don't break free from our PC prison and go on offense, banding together and telling it like it is, we're going to pay a heavy price. Those of us who get it must encourage others to join us. We must take advantage of our majority status before it disappears. We must not let fear silence us. The first thing we must do is to understand the reality of what we're up against. We're led to believe that the threat is radical Islam. I disagree. The threat is Islam. The members of ISIS aren't doing anything that's not commanded in the Quran. The beheadings, the rapes of the women captives, it's all there. Consider this. Without Islam, there'd be no radical Islam. ISIS members don't consider themselves to be radical. They see themselves as representatives of pure Islam. Muhammad is their example. Whatever he did is to be emulated and imitated. And he did some nasty stuff. Did you know that there's a verse in the Quran that says, Allah is the greatest of all deceivers? You heard right. It's Surah 3:54. In Islam, deception is a virtue. Muhammad said, war is deception, and Islam is at war with the entire non-Muslim world. This is why telling the truth about Islam is so important. Everything they tell us about their religion is part of their deception. This is one of the many reasons why negotiating with Muslims is a bad idea and why the deal with Iran is so dangerous. The leaders of the Muslim world will do anything in their power to silence anyone who exposes their deception. But those of us who have studied Islam must get the truth out. This is precisely what I have been called to do as a watchman on the wall, as described in Ezekiel chapter 33. It talks about God bringing the sword upon the people and the watchman who warns them, not only of the danger that's coming, but of the need to get right with God before the day of judgment arrives. This chapter says that if I don't warn you and you are slain, your blood will be on my hands. I fear disobeying God much more than I fear anything ISIS can do to me. Some will probably label me as an Islamophobe and as a hate monger, neither of which are true. My problem is not with the Muslim people. God loves them, and so do I. My problem is with the religion of Islam. Once again, without Islam, there would be no radical Islam. Radical Islam is simply the ideology being carried out by those who are taking the commands of their holy books seriously. Others have already claimed that the so-called radicals make up only about 10% of all Muslims. Is that supposed to be comforting? That means that there are about 100 million Muslims out there who would cut off my head or blow me up if they got the chance. We live in an era of selective tolerance. Unfortunately, those things America has chosen to tolerate are the very things that will lead to our demise if we don't wake up. If you set the tolerance too high on an engine, it'll blow up. The same principle applies to our nation. As a watchman, one of the ways I warn people is by informing them. This is why I wrote Islam in the Last Days, which is available on my website. It will tell you what you need to know about Islam, Sharia law, and the tactics being used against us, as well as how we should respond. It also discusses 4 possible roles Islam will play in the last days. I believe it's an essential tool in your survival kit for the coming days. And lastly, not to diminish the seriousness of what I've just presented, but simply to keep us from taking ourselves too seriously, I'll end by lightening things up a bit with my thought for today. You don't need a parachute to skydive. You only need a parachute to skydive twice. I'm just saying. And now you know. I invite you to check out my website at edrodgers.net. That's Rodgers with a D, where you'll see my books, including Islam in the Last Days. If you like these video programs, you'll want to sign up for my blogs or newsletters. They'll keep you updated on what's really going on around the world. Until our next program, this is Ed Rodgers, showing you how. It's all connected.